The committee as a whole for November 28th, 2023. Full agenda. Hopefully I'll have you out of here by 8 o'clock tonight.
Such an optimist.
We're getting pizza. And I'll have trustee Gannett to read the territorial acknowledgement, please.
Thank you, Chair Boland. We acknowledge that the land on which our school and district buildings are situated is the traditional, unceded, and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin people. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit peoples on the land on which we gather here today.
Thank you. So I get all my paperwork sorted out. I'm just going to go through the roll call of trustees. Chair Humphreys.
Here.
Vice Chair Boland. Here. Trustee Dobson.
Here.
Trustee Doherty.
Here.
Trustee Gannett.
Here.
Trustee Kaiser.
Here.
Trustee Primo. Regrets. Trustee Ruddy.
Here.
Student trustee Novoselic.
No, should be Biggs.
Student trustee Ding.
Here.
Thank you. And then roll call of staff, interim director Kelly.
Here.
Superintendent Burns.
Here.
Superintendent Cousineau.
Here.
Superintendent Poirier.
Here.
Superintendent Riddell.
Here.
Superintendent Smith.
Here.
Executive Officer Kaplan Jamieson.
Here.
We just have the one regret so far from trustee Primo. And the approval of the agenda. We tweaked it a little bit for stuff that's going on. So what's going to happen for the agenda? We'll have open session to talk about the board policies first. Then we're going to jump into closed session to do the audit committee meeting closed session report. Then we're going to jump to open session and do the audit committee accumulated surplus and then the capital priorities. And fourth but not least, in the closed session again, to talk about the collective bargaining agreements and the personnel matters. So with that being said, I'd like a mover and a seconder for the revised committee of the whole agenda, please. Thank you, Mike and Dave Dobson. All in favor? Thank you. And the first item in open session will be the board policies. And I'll hand it over to policy chair Dave Kaiser.
Thank you very much. And in keeping with your comment before, trustee Boland, we're going to go through each of these policies word by word, line by line. And again, read a certain paragraph and then we'll discuss. Just a quick, I mean, I know everybody has it in their package and we do have sort of the purpose of the background. So there were quite a few changes in these three policies. One of them is a new policy actually that was suggested and recommended to be pulled out of policy 9 by our interim director. And so my thought process is, and I have a lot of notes and I'll have to sort of scoot around here a little bit, but my thought on this is that the two policies, I'm going to go in reverse order, policy 19 and policy 11 are, for the most part, the thought is they're more housekeeping items, especially policy 19 in terms of we're really just following the legal process and what other boards are doing and that type of thing. And then we'll finish up with, going over policy 9. I understand there might be some discussion on some of the areas of policy 9. So hopefully that's okay. And so you'll see in the notes that were sent out, one point I think, and I don't remember, Susan, if this was you or Meredith, but we did changed the template format in the policy to sort of maybe modernize it a little bit. It looks a lot neater
Mhm.
and from the old system or the old fonts we used to have, that type of thing. So I just wanted to acknowledge that as well. So I think what I'd like to do is start with policy 19, the fraud management as recommended by COSBO and endorsed by the Policy Review Committee. And if you look in your packages, there's a very detailed set of notes that Meredith put together for all of us to review, and I'm sure you've had time to review it earlier. But it's basically, sorry, I just have to get to it here. A lot of this, when I frame it as housekeeping, it's really just a lot of this information is basically through the Education Act, through COSBO, and then as well, what other boards have basically set up in their policies. And this is a new policy for us, correct? We really had nothing.
No, I think we had one before.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we did. We just hadn't reviewed it since for a little while.
Right. So this is basically just updating it. It's following the processes across the province. And I think that it, for the most part, it's pretty straightforward from a legal standpoint. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read the motion, and then we'll put it on the floor for discussion and questions. I'll ask for a seconder as well. So the motion for policy 19 is, be it resolved that the Renfrew County District School Board of Trustees adopt the revised policy 19 fraud management as recommended by COSBO and endorsed by the Policy Review Committee. Just looking for a seconder for that motion. Trustee Humphries. Were there any questions? Anybody who had read through it? Any thoughts on anything in there? I mean, I'm not the legal expert, but I think that we kind of just put it together as kind of a best practice from across the province with the recommendations from COSBO and the Education Act as well. Okay, then just now I'm just doing the report. Does Leo call for the vote, or do I think Leo calls.
Probably we should call it a vote.
All right, I call for the vote. All in favor of the motion? Okay, that's passed.
So policy 19 is passed. Thank you very much. And again, in terms of reverse order, and again, there's three separate motions here. Be it resolved that the Renfrew County District School Board of Trustees adopt the new policy 11, trustee honoraria and expenses as presented by the board's Policy Review Committee. I'll just put the motion on the floor, ask for a seconder, and then I'll make a few points about this, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So do I have a seconder? Do I do that as the report? I can just put the motion on the floor, right?
Yeah, I guess Leo should be calling for the seconder.
Yeah,
Twist my arm.
Sure.
All right, so you're putting a motion on for
policy 11.
policy 11, so I need a seconder for that, please. Thank you, Kim. Discussion.
Sure, and just a couple of comments. I mean, the main part, it was, again, it was nicely done, the changes made to the new policy, and most of them are just best practices. And changes to expenses. So the main one, for trustees, for the most part, is the cell phone allowance and the monthly cell phone claim and the internet services.
Mhm.
So it was kind of thought that we hadn't changed this amount in quite a while, and we felt like we looked at whatever packages were available, and we felt like a maximum of $100 per month was fair for cell phones and $125 for internet services, because those prices seem to be going up on a regular basis. And then just some minor things for office supplies. Again, if you have the board printer, you're not eligible for that, but if you decide to keep your own printer, then we do feel it was fair to have you claim some expenses for office supplies. So we increased that as well. And then the suggestion was for flowers and things like that for those types of situations should be increased as well, just based on the increase in cost for these things. Any questions, any comments?
Just a comment if I may. I think you also included in your package, there was just a one pager of sort of the key changes that were made, particularly in policy 9 and policy 11. I think you captured the key ones in policy, the new policy 11. They're just identified there as well, just to help you understand it. I think one of the things maybe that was new, as I recall, was just under the honoraria, the attendance amount, I think, is more clearly defined than it had been in the past as well. I think most of us were aware that for SALs, so there was an additional attendance amount we could claim. But it's clear that it's all the statutory committees actually, and I think that was not clear before. So it's nice to get those things cleared up as well.
Thank you. And as well, the reason it was pulled out of policy 9, back to, best practices, and I think our interim director suggested that it would be a best practice to pull it out and make it a policy on its own. So that's the reason why we pulled this out of policy 9 and put it as a new policy 11.
I have a question for you, Dave. So I just noticed on policy 19, the fraud management, that you referred to Renfrew County District School Board as the district,
Yes.
right? And you changed that throughout the policy. But in policy 11, you left it as the board. So are we going to?
So that's probably a typo, because I think we had decided we were changing all board to district in the entire policy.
Well,
I don't know what the reference is to that particular paragraph, but
I think it was depending if it's district, if it's operations, and it's board, if it's board of trustees, so
Yes,
governance.
yes.
is it?
So it would depend on the meaning behind the word,
So it
the
is
intent.
purposely board,
In the trustee honoraria.
because it's about the
whole
board
thing
of
would be-
trustees.
Okay,
Because it just applies to the board, it doesn't apply to the district. Okay.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Yep.
I meant to bring up the district thing actually in my notes.
Any other questions for Dave on policy 11? No, so we have a mover and a seconder, so all in favor of that?
Oh, do we have a seconder?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dave. Hey,
That carry?
Thank you, yes.
Thank you. Okay, so the big policy number 9, board operations, is presented by the board's policy review committee. And again, I think from the last trustee talks, we do expect some discussion in some areas of this policy. The thought process is, I will just kind of, open up the motion to the floor, ask for a seconder, through the vice chair, and then kind of go through the key changes if I could. And then we can open it up to any questions on the table, if I could do that. I appreciate it. So I'm just going to read the motion that be it resolved that the Renfrew County District School Board of Trustees adopts the revised policy 9, board operations as presented by the board's policy review committee.
We'll need a seconder for that motion. Thank you, Mike. All right, then discussion.
So I just want to review that. I made some notes on the key changes. So I think that, again, Meredith and Susan did a great job of putting these changes down and highlighting the key changes that we thought trustees would be interested in sort of bringing out into the open. So the first one I wanted to address is that number 3, changes were made to the timing of the regular board meetings, the committee of the whole to match the time to standing committee. So we would be in this motion, part of this motion would be moving for consistency's sake, moving the meeting times for all board meetings at 1 o'clock. So right now for committees, it's 1 o'clock. For committee of the whole, it's 2. And then the board meeting would start at 4. The suggestion is, if for consistency, is to move the committee of the whole to 1 and the board meeting starting at 3. So we do expect some discussion on this. If we could just wait till the end, and we'll bring it out with questions. The other thing I highlighted was number 5. It was added as a reminder that committees are not decision-making bodies and may make only recommendations to the board in an open session of the board for consideration, finding approval. I don't know, I thought this was important because I had always thought the decisions are made at committee level. And while they are, but the motion is forwarded to board, it's not really decided on until the board passes it open board. So I think we thought that was something that needed to be highlighted and just something that maybe needed to be brought to people's attention. I think we kind of all, perhaps not all, but I certainly just felt, that it was done at committees, which is not true. Number 7, we touched on the agendas, certainly on the website, so our agenda must be posted prior to the meeting. I believe it's 72 hours. And additional items that are added to the chair is 48 hours. Is that correct? I can't remember.
Sorry, I'm kind of lost about where you are, Dave.
7, point number 7.
Like big point number 7?
Key changes made to the Renfrew
Oh.
Sports
Oh,
policy.
same here. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
I was looking at number 7 actually in the.
So we never really had anything specific on, that didn't seem to be too specific as when we posted things for the public, especially if there's an additional item that's going to be added by the chair. There was some discussion as to, I think there was a recommendation by the legal opinion and also by other boards that, you can't really add anything to the agenda once it's set. We felt like that was not correct. There could be time sensitive items that a trustee wants to bring to the attention of the chair to add to the agenda, and we should be able to do that. There was some discussion that we needed to make sure the public was aware of any new items being added to the agenda. So I believe we set it at 48 hours. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So that's new. There was some different discussions and some different language on delegations presenting to the board. Again, I think that the thought process was, and this is just to clarify that people would come and make presentations to the board meeting, but actually where they make presentations is at the committee level.
Mhm.
That's where the discussion is, and it's no different than administration bringing reports to the board at committee level. And there was some language I think we put in, correct me if I'm wrong, Meredith or Susan, that, some boards, in terms of approaching the chair with a delegation to attend a board meeting were, people who didn't really have an interest in the board. They were from outside the board. So we kind of clarified that language that they really need to be a stakeholder within our district. And then the clarity around attendance and absences. So, this is point number 10. There's now, correct me if I'm wrong, but from my recollection, it's a fairly new item in the Education Act that trustees who miss 3 consecutive board meetings can technically be removed from their position. And so we certainly had some discussion on that because I think it's personally ridiculous. But when we go through the whole process of it, in terms of, I think the point I want to make is attendance and absences. So there's 2 different types of absences. So one is an extended absent where a trustee might, for whatever reason, not be able to attend meetings over an extended period of time. And then there's excused absences where a trustee just needs to be excused for 1 meeting. And so this is an area that we might explore later in terms of addressing this more directly in policy 9. But right now, the way it is that, Meredith, I know we just talked about this morning, but I think that, right now the trustee has a responsibility, if they're not able to attend meetings, to let the chair know. And if there's a situation, while it's not specifically outlined in here, what we discussed was there's a situation where a trustee requests an extended leave of absence could be health issues, could be anything related to reason why they have a good reason or good excuse to be absent from 3 consecutive meetings. They would actually bring that to the director and the chair. To the chair first, I think. The chair then goes to the director, and the board can actually vote on that requested extended absence. Did I get that right, Meredith?
Slightly. There's just a little tweak. So, if we look at 6.2 and 6.3, it goes to the director's office, correct?
Mhm.
So if someone is going to be absent, it goes to the director's office. If there's a request for an excused absence, that also should go in advance to the director's office, and then there's a motion to vote on that. So, so the difference is, right now, we just have absent or present. We're adding in some clarity that there could be an excused absence for extenuating circumstances, and that absence is to be voted on by the Board of Trustees.
So would that be the same as an extended absence request as well?
It could be for one meeting or it could be for extended. So I would use the example of someone has had 2 absences and then they have a surgery and they have to be gone for it. You would say, I'm in advance, please put it on the agenda, give me an excuse so that you don't have 3 in a row. Or you might know that you're going to be out of commission for 3 months for a very, very reasonable request. And you put that request forward to the board to give you an extended leave.
So then, I mean, you can have an absence with a regret, which is totally different. So you can still let the chair know. And so who is the person in the director's office that then needs to be advance notice for an extended or an excused absence? Is that the director? Or what do you mean by the director's office? I can't remember.
Usually it's Shelley, right? People usually let you know.
Not necessarily.
Sometimes they let me know.
Might be the trustees' point of contact, so
Right.
either the director or emeritus makes sense.
And we did,
Typically now, when I have regrets, I've never asked for an extended absence or
No.
excuse that,
No.
but I always let the chair know. I'm not able to make the meeting for whatever reason, and so that's what I've been doing. I don't know if other trustees have been doing the same thing,
Yeah.
but so are you suggesting that even for an absent with regret that we still contact Shelley through the director's office
or myself,
or yourself?
and we left it vague as director's office because if I'm not here or Shelley's not here, it's somebody in the director's office is aware. And then your name's not read out with, the attendance, and then we will say, we know that trustee X, has regrets.
We have to let 2 people know, the chair and the directors.
I think sorry if I may, I think as long as the director's office knows, then, we're in touch often, so we would know before the meeting starts anyway. So it's not as if you'd need a request, an approval by the board for individual absences, but if you're going to be prolonged absences, or if it's in a spot where you would be missing a 3rd meeting and know it, then it needs to come to the, unless you want to vacate your seat, I guess that's the other question. But you would need to bring a request for a motion to the board for approval for that absence. And this isn't new, it's just we haven't really had it clarified in our policy as part of the Education Act.
And I guess if I may just further, the difference between regular absence and excused absence is the excused doesn't count. So I think that's fairly clear, but just to spell it out, that doesn't count against you in your attendance. So you're not
And
marked absent.
Yeah, and I think it needs to be noted that it's the trustee's responsibility. And again, don't like the policy myself in the Ed Act about 3 consecutive meetings and you're out. It's not consistent with the municipal act, and it just seems to be rather sort of a unfair policy. But as our director said, that's just the way it is. It's in the Ed Act. There's nothing you can do about it. So, any questions on the extended or excused absence?
Just, Dave,
Sure.
it's more of a comment. I just know that I can remember, Susan, when she's out of the country, or myself, or any of us were out of the country, we just always try to do our due diligence well ahead of time. If we've got a trip planned or something, wherever we're going, that we've always just done that. So, it's just
Yeah.
a matter of, professionalism and respect and letting everybody know that, like,
I think part of it is that, I think I did miss the one policy review committee meeting, but I think part of it is that, let's just say you are away on vacation and then something else comes up and you miss a 2nd meeting and then you have an emergency for the 3rd. And it's like, okay, what do I do? Now that's where you would go in for, an excused absence so that 3rd meeting may not count. Does that make sense, Mike?
Yep.
Again, I don't think it's to get rid of anybody or penalize anybody, but I would phrase it as it's the onus on the trustee to make sure that the responsibility that they have for attending meetings based on the Education Act, that they take it seriously, really. I think that's it.
And just, excuse me, Chair, in the last, I mean, what we've done in the past is, I mean, if I know I'm gonna be away, like in a high probability, I'll be away for the most of the month, if not all the month of April. So I'll approach some of you to say, can you fill in for this or that? And, you just try and be proactive rather than at the last minute. Well, most of us know well in advance post absences, not all the time, but most of the time. So I just think that, we try and, ask our fellow trustees that, can you fill in for this committee or that meeting? And
Yep.
for the most part, in my 5 years here, it's worked quite seamlessly. And I praise my fellow trustees for being able to do that. It just puts the rest of us at ease that, we can jump in and assist whenever we can, if we can.
Like you did for me yesterday. Thank you very much. We're a team, right?
No problem.
Meredith, just a question, and I cannot for the life of me remember. So this is not just board meetings. This is committee and board meetings, or is it just with the public board meetings that we're talking about 3 consecutive?
Public board meetings. So the meeting that starts at 4:00, which if maybe changed to 3:00, but that is the meeting where your absence counts for 3
Right.
consecutive. I'll also just note that we added some language as well that it's not, it's at the organizational meeting that the year starts and ends. So if you missed 2 meetings prior to the organizational meeting, and then you missed the next meeting, that's not 3 because we're starting.
Starts from scratch at the
Yeah.
beginning of the board's year.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to know because, I mean, could affect me, but I mean, if you come for the committee meeting or the committee of the whole meeting and then you leave and don't attend the board meeting, that's an absence.
That's right.
So that's where the trustee needs to have some responsibility to ask for, an excused absence. Okay. I think those are the highlights. Did I miss anything out of policy 9 that? Otherwise, we just, Mr. Vice Chair, if we could just open it up for discussion. If any of the trustees have any other questions?
So any other questions?
Oh, Jody wants to join.
Sorry.
That's okay. I just had one question. I was at the meeting, but just to clarify, so if the 3rd meeting is the one where you're trying to get an excused absence, what if the vote? Because then you're already not there, because that's where the vote would take place, correct? I guess
That's a
just
good
like-
question. I mean, technically, if the board said no, that would be your
That would
third
be-
meeting
okay.
and you would be fighting for your
I guess, yeah.
survival. And I honestly can't see that ever happening.
yeah.
And
I guess just to clarify it more than anything.
I would say technically that's the way it would be. Yeah. That's why I don't like the rule myself, but
Are you talking? Your mic is off. Can you not hear the room, Jody?
I can, I guess it's fortuitous that I came during the absence discussion. Unfortunately, I was just in a client's house who had mobility issues, so I apologize for my tardiness, but I am here.
And I'm muted, but the room is not, so. Okay.
those are the highlights that I wanted to cover. I don't know if Mr. Vice Chair, there's any other comments?
So just let you know, Jody, we're talking about policy number 9 and about the stuff, the changes that Dave had put in our package. And now we're up for any other discussions or any changes to those recommendations at the moment. From anybody, any discussions? And any of the changes? Seeing none, then I put the motion to the floor for a vote. All in favor? Any people abstaining? Those against? And the motion is passed. Thank you and to the committee for all your hard work. And just
Clarity that we.
And just a question for that, so this will go into effect like the time, so will that be then in December, the next meeting?
Yep, next meeting in December. It will come to the board tonight and then be ratified. And after it's been ratified at the board, it will become policy and go up on the website. And so the December meetings will be 1 and 3. So now consistently, all meetings will be 1 and 3, or just 1. If there's not 3.
And as well, I might add the expenses will start then for December as well, right? Correct? The new expenses, that are in policy 11,
Yes, all of the policies. So flower expenses, other expenses.
retroactive to 20.
I don't remember seeing that in there.
It's
Was that in
in
the
there
fine
somewhere.
print?
I wrote it in one.
Invisible ink?
And I guess I'll just make the point, even if they're not on the website, they're still enacted, but they should be. Yeah.
Just when when I called the roll of trustees, I mistakenly left out student trustee bags. So it's bags that's not here. Sorry, apologize for that mistake. Right. Lots of paperwork. Okay, just to let you know, Jody, too, the agenda's changed a little bit. The first part, we were in open, and that's just with the board policies. And now we're gonna go into closed session for the audit committee meeting. We're gonna then come out of closed into open session and do the remaining items within the open session. And then we're going to go back into closed and do the last 3 items in the closed session. So that's the changed agenda. So that being said, I require a mover and a seconder to move into closed session, please. Thank you, Mike. And seconded by Jody. All in favor? Thank you. And that passed. And so we'll get the doors closed, please. We're in open, and the first item is the audit committee meeting open session report. Would be me. So this is the audit committee met on Wednesday, November 22nd, 2023, to discuss the following items. Number 1, the 2023-24 regional internal audit update, and 2, draft audited financial statements for the year ending August 31st, 2023. The following recommendations were made. Number 1, the 2023-24 regional internal audit update that the Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee receives for information, the November 22nd, 2023 REAT update. And number 2, the draft audited financial statements for the year ended August 31st, 2023. That the Renfrew County District School Board adopt the draft 2022-2023 financial statements as audited and reported upon by Welch LLP at their November 28th, 2023 board meeting, subject to approval of the Renfrew County Joint Transportation Consortium financial statements for their year end August 31st, 2023, and board approval of the internally restricted accumulated surplus transfers. there would also be attachments with this of the school board compliance report to the draft consolidated financial statements of RCDSB as of August 31st, 2023. I think as already mentioned, yesterday we had the FUS consortium meeting and passed the audit statement for that consortium. So that was one of the things Tammy was waiting for, make sure that that didn't change, because she'd have to stay up well past midnight just to all the numbers again. So I need a seconder for these recommendations. Thank you, Mike. All in favor? Thank you. That's passed. And so this is the presentation of financial statements and open.
Okay, I'm just gonna give like a 2-minute version of what we discussed. So attach the financial statements as an unqualified audit report, which means there was no concerns. The financial statements are prepared in accordance with the ministry accounting guidelines. Embedded in these statements is an annual deficit this year of 1.2 million. However, not all of that is on account of operations. Only a small portion is on account of operations, 94,000. The remainder is included in other areas of the accumulated surplus, which is where that Tammy and Jennifer will explain the internal reserve transfers will cover, or what they offset in as part of that deficit. But the operating portion of that 1.2 million is a small deficit of 94,000.
That's pretty good, 94,000.
Yeah. Pretty much great.
Good. Any questions? From that, we do have a recommendation. I'll just read it out to you. That the Renfrew County District School Board adopt the draft 2022-23 financial statements as audited and reported upon by Welch LLP at their meeting November 28th, 2023 board meeting, subject to the approval of the Renfrew County Joint Transportation Consortium financial statements for the year ended August 31st, 2023, and board approval of the internally restricted cumulative surplus transfers. That's recommendation that I'm moving. We need a seconder, please. Thank you, Susan. All in favor? And that's passed. Again, thank you. And then Jen for the accumulated surplus appropriation transfers.
Okay, so this is our normal practice every year, that we do these transfers, and these are what both have been budgeted for in our budgeted numbers as well. The first one is 1,151,457 from internally appropriated for retirement gratuities to fund the current year amortization of the future benefit of the retirement gratuities. And the second one is to transfer 940,000 from the internally appropriated for the ICT plan to fund the grade 7 to 12 one-to-one devices that were implemented recently.
So that's a recommendation. Any discussion on those? All right, I need a mover for that recommendation, please. Thank you, Kim, and a seconder, Dave Kaiser, all in favor? Thank you, and that's passed. And then capital priorities.
Thanks.
I think all the stuff you had to do is probably working.
Probably. I just passed her in the hallway, so he's here. You guys got off real easy. Yeah. Kind of pleasure. Yeah, get your signature. Sure. You can come see me when you're done. I think I'm right now. I've got to wait. Oh, sorry, not that one now. Oops. Okay, nope, I'm missing a page. Okay, well, I'll come see. Sure, yes, because I'm missing a page. Okay. So,
Thank you. Hi, Bill, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule just to squeeze us in.
Here to serve.
Oh, good. Yes. Okay, like every year, Bill puts his thinking cap on and comes up with a great list of priorities that he will share with you. And I believe in the report indicated the change in funding that we've received year over year over year. And well, it's not everything gets done for different reasons, which is why we have a list greater than what we're actually going to do, because whether it's construction costs, labor shortages, or other pressing priorities, so this is just the best thing at this time.
Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at the report. Our funding is very, it's within $85,000 of what we received last year. So that's nice that it's stable. We have more than we can spend at this point. So that's our biggest challenge right now is getting projects underway and completed by that August 31st deadline. There's a number of projects that are wrapping up now based on, Eganville, the electrician is there next week as we'll be hoisting the new air handling units on over Christmas, but all the inside work was done in the first week of school. So it's that constant push to try and get all the pieces aligned in operating schools, which is a struggle. That 2-month window is not nearly enough time. So we try and get as much work done as we can through the school year. And there's lots of challenges. We do have a very, very old fleet of schools. I saw a report from the Financial Accountability Officer of Ontario from 2020 that said the average age of schools in Ontario was just over 40 years. And so our fleet of buildings is just shy of 70 years old if we take it as a whole. And that will always be the case because we're not attracting money for new schools, and we don't see anything in the near future for that. So we work very hard to maintain our existing buildings. And we try and create meaningful learning environments wherever possible, which is that's a particular interest of mine that the board has supported that research. And we're starting now to implement that work on active classrooms, having flexible furniture, especially where we have educators who are willing to employ that different model, so that we want to get away from tombstone rows of desks and that stand to deliver education. It should be a more interactive process. And so we're working very hard to move towards that and trying to support educators wherever we can to reach that goal. There's one item, that deferred revenue, where I'm asking for $260,000, and I hope that it won't be that much, but that's tied to the item in red, line 84 in my capital priorities list. So that's to replace the transformer for this building. It's in red and deferred revenues because the ministry does not support any capital improvements to admin buildings, which that's a particular struggle here and at Mary Street, especially. I don't really have any work on the building at Mary Street because it's not supported. And there's going to be hard decisions about what we do with that building, about how we try to maintain it coming in the future. So back to this building, there's actually 2 services coming in. There's one coming off the pole in front of Mullet Hill Shrug Mart, which is actually a lead service, which I knew they existed, but I had never seen a lead electrical service because lead has very low melting point. So if there was a fire on that pole, the people who work on that equipment, they're few and far between because it was from the 1950s, and by the time 1960 rolled around, those services weren't being installed anymore. So the people who have the expertise to work on them don't really exist anymore. So that would be a huge issue for this building for potentially for months if we lost that transformer. So my plan is for next summer, if we can get a transformer, which are in short supply, we would replace the two services coming into this building with one, and it would just provide us with a greater level of security. And for mentioned about how I put on my thinking cap. I'm certainly involved in the process, but we do try and be collaborative with taking a lot of data in from a variety of sources. So we did go out to the principals this fall, seeking their input on capital projects. So we've incorporated that wherever we could in the list. We also look at the ministry's database of our facilities. So that's VFA database, which the ministry employs building assessors who go around and they look at the architectural and mechanical features of the building, and we have those reports. You know, I think the last ones that were done for our facilities were in 2019. There's a bit of a gap, and they're just restarting that process. So that feeds into our planning for capital projects. And then also we review all our work orders and where if we're seeing units, air handling units that are of a certain vintage and causing more problems, then they get on the list. So that's, we have two big projects assigned to our high school and to fellows, replacing two large air handling units at each site. And that's based on those units being 30 plus years old, and they've got a 25-year lifespan. So we're on borrowed time with them. That's how that process goes. So we take input from all our trades who are actually working on the equipment and look at our annual maintenance reports on the equipment to see the condition of it, as we look to try and get rid of stuff before it breaks down. The other piece, a big chunk of the money I'm asking for is keeping our roofs up. We do have, I know that we do experience roof leaks on maybe not a weekly basis, but almost that, which is very common with flat roofs. Anytime there's a penetration on a flat roof, there's water coming into the building. But overall, our roofs are in good shape, and I'd like to keep that because it prevents so many other problems down the road. So that's a big chunk of our planned projects. We're also continuing to work on our accessibility projects. So we've been revitalizing and refurbishing our lifts in buildings, as well as improving accessibility getting into the building from the outside, which those projects are important and continuing. We have a number of classrooms that we will revitalize, which those are the projects that we really like because it's our trades who are building those nice maple and birch cabinets and putting in the new flooring. But we have to figure out how we can get more of those projects done because we've got Barnes and I were walking through every room in Champlain, and there's a number of rooms there that really haven't been touched since 1992, and we need to get to them. And I don't know what the answer is today, but I know that those spaces need to be revitalized because it's we want to give our students and our staff the best environment we can. And we know that environment does contribute to their success. When we're talking about our school design standards, it's somewhere around 17% you can attribute to that environment. So and those are the pieces that are the easiest to control. So let's squeeze as much as we can out of that 17%. I can stop talking now.
Student.
So it was really interesting that we, not just Champlain, but at Beachburg and Walter Zato and Herman Street, where we had an opportunity to walk around and spend some time in the classrooms and to talk to students about the things that they liked about their classrooms, and also, what challenges they were seeing or things that they would change if they could. And there were, a number of comments about how the yard could be improved and greater play opportunities and better sports fields. But sometimes it was putting the paper back in the washrooms because the hand dryers are so loud. And then, Walter's out, we're staying in the classroom, and then you hear the hand dryer be activated. And just to have that happening 100 times a day or 150 times a day, that's, it's thinking about all those pieces that contribute to a supportive learning environment. And the last piece, I had an opportunity to be at a conference that dealt a lot with how the environment, or the classroom environment, and how that supports student learners. And I was at a session about trauma-informed design. And I think about some of our classrooms that support our neediest learners, and to try and ensure that we're providing a peaceful space that supports their well-being, and that we're putting those pieces in place that help them and their adults in the room regulate, so that they can get as much out of that time as they can. Like that's a real personal interest of mine, and I need to figure out how we can incorporate those learnings into our classrooms. So that will be on my agenda for our classroom renovations this year as well. Now I'm really going to stop talking.
Thank you very much, Bill. Any questions? Yes, Mike.
And I know that Valor's been the bane of your existence at some point. I just wanted to, it says here, gym light replacement LED lights. Was originally LEDs put in or not?
No, it was discussed at the time, and at that point, almost 10 years ago, we couldn't afford to.
Okay. And I guess putting LED lights in, you'll probably save also some electrical money. And my second one, same school, gym divider. Is it operable right now, or?
It is operable, and I'm hoping that it can be a relatively easy. It's finding someone to do it. The original contractor and the manufacturer will not take the project on, but we have to shorten the panels, which is much better if it was done before they went up, but that's sort of out of our control at this point.
There's no, I know that it fell years ago. We had an issue with a heavy snow load. We had issues.
And that's when today, the door would work fine at Valor. January 30th, if we have a bit of snow and ice, it will be scraping, and then it can become to the point where it becomes inoperable.
Thanks, Bill. Okay. Susan, you have a question?
Couple questions. One was around the digital signage, and I know this has been a bit of an ongoing piece for quite a while. So are we really hoping to get the rest of the digital signs installed this year? Because it's been on the agenda for a bit.
Yes, it has. It has been on for a while. We found a couple of purchasing agreements that we can access through the province, which we're trying to use more and more to reduce our reliance on developing scopes of work. So we're evaluating those OECM agreements, and I'm hopeful that this will be rolling when the snow disappears and complete by August 31st for the final phase.
Good.
And that will also, it'll be the number of new signs, but it will also be a common platform. So we'll be upgrading all our existing signs so that they are all on the same platform. Where right now we have 4 different interfaces with the signage, which is, it just makes everything more difficult.
We've had a lot of struggles, I know, with the current digital signs.
Yeah.
So that's good to hear. And just one more, if I could ask, just around the ventilation. I know you've got lots of places where you're working on HVAC, and I know that's still a high priority provincially. And so, what are the kind of key things you're doing in the ventilation side of repairs and upgrades?
So continuing to refurbish or replace existing units, adding air conditioning has become standard now. So I at this point, I can't justify replacing units simply to add air conditioning to it if there's still, 8 years of useful life left in it. But wherever we are replacing aged units, we do add air conditioning. We are in terms of the amount of ventilation that we're providing to our spaces, we're in really good shape. And that was, through the CVRS funding, through COVID that we got through the ministry and through the federal government. Part of that was an evaluation of before and after with all our upgrades. So we now know how much air we're supplying to each individual classroom. And we know that for the most part, we're really, really good. But there are some spaces that we're significantly over ventilating. So there's opportunities for some energy savings there. And the other thing that we did was we added the active air purification. So that, my plan is that we would be trying to get all our spaces to 10% above the ASHRAE, which is the Association of the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration Engineers and something else. So anyway, they make all the recommendations about ventilation that building codes follow. So we would be looking to meet the recommendations plus 10%. Plus we have active disinfection in all our sites. And then anything above that, we would be turning units down so that we're now harvesting energy that we don't have to spend.
It's great.
We need to push on the energy front as well.
Super. Thank you.
Okay, so Dave, and then to you, Jody.
First of all, to both of you, I mean, it's kind of nice to hear. I don't think I've ever heard it here that you're going out to students, you're going out to principals and getting, that kind of input because they're on the front line, right? They really know, and I'm sure it's a challenging task to them prioritize from there. But anyway, you did address it earlier, and I acknowledge that, accessibility issues are generally only important to those people who need them. But where are we with, do you have any, maybe I'll make a suggestion, is it probably one of the biggest issues in terms of accessibility issues is actually knowing where to go. Where is the accessible entrance? When you go to the front of the school and there's no signs, there's no arrows, there's nothing, you're lost. And so I'm just wondering if that can be part of what you're looking at. And again, I don't know what funding to respond to accessibility issues really means. There's nothing specific there, but I'm assuming you're looking at everything in general. And that's a big deal for anyone who needs accessibility to a building is where do you go?
Yep. That's a really, really good point. It is it's a generic placeholder there because a lot of times their funding for accessibility is to address specific student issues that come up through the year that I'm not aware of at this time, but on January 1st, it may be an issue. Your point about signage, it's that's a great start is letting people know where to go. I think I mentioned it the last time I was here that I did complete a course through the Rick Hansen Foundation of the Accessibility Assessor course. I'm writing my exam in Ottawa at CSA. It's at Algonquin College, but it's overseen by CSA. I'm writing my exam on Thursday so that then I would be, if I pass, able to do the accessibility assessments. And so the thing I like most about the accessibility template that they use, it's not a minimum code-based standard. It's a functional accessibility standard. So it's not meeting just the minimums of the building code, but actually looking at how people use the space. Signage is a huge part of that, about knowing where to go and incorporating those tenets of universal design into when we're doing upgrades so that we're making the building better for everyone, which includes making it more accessible. So you will see more and more coming from that, including if I could somehow carve out the time, I would love to start doing accessibility assessments on buildings, because then that gives us our template of the steps we need to take to make our buildings more accessible for all.
And just to be honest with you, it's not really on anyone's radar until it's brought to someone's attention. And there's all kinds of these little idiosyncrasies, I'll call them. For example, on the base, there's a wheelchair access to the hockey arena viewing area for someone, but the problem is the ramp, it's not wide enough for a wheelchair. So you actually have to get up and you have to pick it up and turn it around. Just little things like that. And again, that's my personal experience. It's not really on anyone's radar. To be honest with you, when you bring it to their attention, most places will bend over backwards to accommodate some way, shape, or form. But I still maintain the toughest thing is, it's little things like the handicap buttons don't work. And it's just not knowing where to go. Like you get into the front door and then where do you go now? There's just nothing there to, and it's very frustrating to find someone to ask. And so anyway, that would be my recommendation or suggestion. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jody?
Thank you. And thank you for this report. At the last time we spoke about this in November of last year, my concern was that the capital priorities didn't have any, priorities. It didn't have any numbering of priorities, so we knew which ones were more important than the other ones. And it seems like this is still presented in the same way, that it's alphabetically rather than by importance. And this, where my concern comes from, is as my fellow trustee just mentioned, the accessibility point, which was my concern at the last time. And so when I look at the November 2022 list and I compare it to the November 2023 list, about 85% of the accessibility items on the 2022 list remain on the 2023 list. And it seems that other items, like, for example, the vape sensor or some of the other kind of less important items, have been addressed. And so I'm going to raise my concern again that some of these priorities are more important than others. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about how we're rating those priorities and how it is that we are prioritizing accessibility, or how we plan to prioritize the accessibility items that we already know before we do any further assessments that we know are a problem and that haven't been addressed yet.
Okay, so that's a really good question. I would, I would ask for the opportunity to review the previous projects that were completed in terms of accessibility and bring something back to the trustees to report on what was done and what the plan is for this year. If the desire is for a prioritized list of projects, I can do that too.
That certainly, I'll leave it to my other trustees to comment, but I think perhaps not all of the lists needs to be prioritized from 1 to 100. However, I think the top priorities ought to be identified, and that way when it comes back next year, we can have a look and see whether what's stopping them from going ahead, because a school that lacks accessibility is of much diminished worth to the students who require that accessibility. And I think it's somewhere where the bar is high and ought to be high, and that we need to keep an eye on it and continue searching. So I'll maybe put that to my fellow trustees, that to request that we do follow up on this at perhaps the next board meeting or the first board meeting of the new year, to see what needs to happen and how we're going to go about reviewing this. The only other question that I had, let's see if the outdoor signage. That was the other thing. Have we considered just getting rid of the digital signs? Like, have we looked into a cost benefit analysis of these, if they're bringing a lot of value to the school for the amount of money that we continue to put into them, particularly given that most people are getting their information online rather than in, well, I guess not brick and mortar, but outdoor screens. Has that been canvassed?
I'm not, I will answer that question, that it would not be up to facilities to determine that cost benefit analysis. It would, so I can't answer that question.
Sorry, and so would it be up to the board to say, let's get rid of the digital signs?
Yes, Dave?
Well, my recollection is, if I can help, is that was a board decision to invest in digital signs. And probably the main reason that I can recall the board made the decision was our coterminous board, the Catholic board, had all digital signs at their schools. And it was kind of like, we need to follow what they're doing, because it was at the time considered to be, this great advantage. So it was a board decision as far as I can remember. And it would have to, in my opinion, come back to the board on an agenda item and be discussed, as far as my opinion would be.
Okay, so I suppose my request, and I'll follow up with it, is to have the two items being the prioritization of accessibility items as well as the reconsideration of the value or the cost benefit analysis of the digital signs.
Jody, if I could just clarify, on the prioritization, are you looking for the criteria we look at when we prioritize? Are you looking at each category to be listed in a priority, or are you looking for a list of 1, 2? I'm not really sure what you're looking for on the prioritization. Are you just wondering how it is we go about prioritizing on the operational side of things, how we go about prioritizing which jobs we move ahead with? Or are you actually asking for a prioritized list?
My request is that we prioritize all of the accessibility items above any of the other items, and if not, then my request would be to an explanation of why it doesn't make the list. Because I understand that we are limited by funding, we're limited by time. However, it seems to me that accessibility and the ability to enter the building needs to be addressed prior to, for example, a vape sensor.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Thank you.
Also, can I add, so just like for some other reports that we have, and in other organizations, so they have like, you have your list here of your top 100. Would it be possible then, so next year or at some point in the future, that you have an accompanying list to say, these are completed, these are still, work in progress, and the reason why. So let's say it is an accessibility issue, it's because, we don't have somebody to come in to actually work and do that. So we're waiting for somebody to come in and complete that project, as an example. I'm not sure. So would it be possible to do something like that where
Sort of like a status of, so we have our list and the status over.
so that, once, that you have all this stuff here, right? I think it was last year as well, right? I think it was 99 because I commented on you favored Wayne Gretzky because of that. We would have an ongoing, that list would be ongoing kind of thing. And then, once it's all completed, then we know that it's completed, and then we can see, where it is completed. And, if none of the accessibility ones are completed, but all the HVAC is, then, we can see that, the priority was HVAC or something, right? So in combination to what Jody had said.
I think you might also get an appreciation for how long some of these projects take to get to completion. And when you'll see them year over year over year, it's, from inception to procurement to implementation, and then keeping in mind for a good chunk of the year, we have students in our buildings. And so, there's snippets of time where you can actually go in and get the work done. So sure, we could do that.
Great. Any other questions?
Just one more. I understand. I understand,
No, it's
brought up by a parent at SEAC, our parent rep, recently about a grade 8 student at Rockwood who's been vying and trying through school council to try and get a ramp. I believe the student's graduating in June, and not just for this student, but for future students to get on the stage. And in my ignorance, I sort of like, it's a ramp, like what, but in drilling down, there's a lot more to it. And, some of the parameters, like I think you can only downgrade an inch for every foot, things like that. Like, there's all kinds of parameters. So something that sounds easy sometimes to us, when you start drilling down on it, it's a lot more complicated or expensive than we initially think. I'm learning that, and I agree with my fellow trustee Dave Kaiser that although it's really, really important, it's not so simplistic, because I'm trying to gather some information. But I understand that there's approximately 2.5 feet of rise to be able to have a ramp on a stage. Well, that would make a 24-foot ramp. There's things that I think that we in this audience, until we research it, maybe just don't take into account. I mean, I didn't until I started to drill down a little bit on it. So that, and the other second thing is, some of the things our board staff might be able to do, but a lot of them they couldn't, or they'd need an engineering report, things like that, there's a lot more to it that you and your team would know than we would. So, I would love to see, this student be able to get up on the stage, and I'd like to see future students do that, but I do realize after doing some preliminary investigation into this, that it's not nearly as simple, because in the old days, I would think, okay, let's just build a ramp. Like, get your staff and away we go, but there's so much more to it, is where I'm coming from.
Stage access is a particularly difficult issue, like that we're looking at Madawaska, which has a 32-inch stage, so that's a 32-foot ramp. That it's not practical. We're looking at other options to have a portable lift that would be, you would roll on, rise up, and roll onto the stage. The problem is they're not certified by TSSA because they're portable. So there's nothing's ever easy, but we are, in terms of stage access, it is one that I hope to have solved before graduation.
Well, I'll talk to you privately about this particular issue, but it's just concerning, and I'm sure there's other issues out there that we have no idea they're going on, but I just agree with, I agree with sort of Jody's situations that, if we're more enlightened and are more aware of those specifics, then as a board, maybe we can advocate more for that to be higher on the priority list. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. Any other questions for Bill or Jen about this? Seeing none, there is a recommendation coming with Bill's report. I'll just read it out. That the Renfrew County District School Board approved the 2023-2024 capital priorities as presented in the amount of a mere $14,956,680. Motion to thank you, Dave Kaiser, and seconded by Kim. All in favor of this? Thank you, and that's passed. Thank you, thank you. You're gonna be busy again this year.
Get to work.
I texted and I'm just waiting to see whose buses those are.
Yeah.
I think the Renfrew County, there's two Renfrew County as far as I can see.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if they're transporting students from our schools or any of our coterminous sports.
They would be, they came out of Jean Joie, so they would be students from, or no, I guess they wouldn't be students.
They usually let it, my assumption is that it's because they normally stream out, 20 to 40 buses at this time, but I am just double checking.
Okay, next, according to our complicated agenda, back into closed session again. All right, so I require a mover and a seconder to go into close, please. Thank you, Christina and Dave Dodson. All in favor? And that's passed.
So great, so Grace will let you know. That's the thing, in the beginning, you either love it or you hate it, but if you can get more kids to enjoy it,
Yeah.
at least you get to a certain level of enjoyment service too. So that's really great.
First.
Go to the next report.
Answer. You don't understand. Yeah, won't understand that.
Yes, December 5th is in the.
You don't understand the concept. Get to the answer, but it's great. My mother, when I was a kid, made a cake. I bought the cake. And, she would have been a great teacher. She sort of had a bit of a wrap around.
Okay, great report. Thank you, Superintendent Riddell, for bringing your team and giving us an update on that. Very, very much appreciated. Go on to the committee reports to the board, and I think we're starting out with our committee of the whole open and closed session reports, and I'll ask trustee Boland to lead us in that, please.
All right, thank you. Committee of the whole open session report for November 28th, 2023. It's a 2-pager today, just for the open stuff. So I should have bought popcorn for everybody. The committee of the whole of Renfrew County District School Board met on September 28th, 2023 and discussed the following items in open session. Board policies. The following motions were adopted. Be resolved that the Renfrew County District School Board of Trustees adopt the revised policy 19 fraud management as recommended by COSBO and endorsed by the Policy Review Committee. Be it resolved that the Renfrew County District School Board of Trustees adopt the new policy 11 trustee honoraria and expenses as presented by the board's Policy Review Committee. Be it resolved that the Renfrew County District School Board of Trustees adopts the revised policy 9 board operations as presented by the board's Policy Review Committee. Number 2, audit committee meeting open report presented by SO Jennifer Barnes and Tammy Hoffman, manager of finance. The following motions were adopted. That the 2023-24 regional internal audit update that the Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee receives for information the November 22nd, 2023 REAT update. And also that the Renfrew County District School Board adopt the draft 2022-2023 financial statements as audited and reported upon by Welch LLP at the November 28th, 2023 board meeting, subject to the approval of the Renfrew County Joint Transportation Consortium financial statements for the year ended August 31st, 2023, and board approval of the internally restricted accumulated surplus transfers. And number 3, the accumulated surplus appropriation transfers presented by SO Barnes, Senior Manager Hoffman, Auditor Tammy Sylvester. The following motions were adopted. That the Renfrew County District School Board approves the internal appropriation in the 2022-2023 year as follows. Accumulated surplus internally appropriated. Number 1, transfer of $1,151,457 from internally appropriated for retirement gratuities to fund the current year amortization of the future benefit for retirement gratuities. Then number 2, transfer of $940,000 from internally appropriated for ICT plan to fund grades 7 to 12 one-to-one devices. And last, the capital priorities presented by Senior Manager of Facilities Bill Murray. The following motion was adopted. That the Renfrew County District School Board approved the 2023-2024 capital priorities as presented in the amount of $14,956,680. I move that the board adopts this report.
Thank you, Vice Chair Boland. I have a motion to adopt the committee of the whole open session report. Do I have a seconder, please? Trustee Doherty, thank you very much. Any discussion or questions? All in favor of adopting this report? And that is carried. Thank you. And committee of the whole closed session report.
A little short, just one.
A little shorter.
Little short.
Thank you.
The Committee of the Whole of Renfrew County District School Board met September 28th, 2023, and discussed the following items in closed session. That the RCDSB adopts the closed session report presented on November 28th, 2023. The Audit Committee closed session report of November 22nd, 2023 for information. Motions were adopted in closed session on negotiation and personnel matters. Student trustees were excused from closed session. Senior staff were excused from attending Committee of the Whole session during the personnel matter. That the RCDSB adopts a closed session report presented on November 27th, 2023. I move the board adopts this report.
It's the 28th though, right?
Yes.
November 20th. Thank you. Do I have a seconder to adopt the report of the closed session? Trustee Gannett, thank you very much. Do I have any other discussion or comments on the closed session? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting the closed session report? And that's carried. Thank you. Program and Student Achievement Committee open session report of November the 15th. Trustee Gannett, do you have a report on?
Yeah, just briefly, Chair, that the Program and Student Committee met on Wednesday, November 15th to discuss the following items. Math Action Plan, Programming Plan Report, which we've just been given the pleasure. There were no recommendations made in this particular report. And I move that this,
Move the receipt of the report, Trustee Gannett.
yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder to receive this report? Trustee Doherty, thank you very much. Any questions or comments for Trustee Gannett? Seeing none, all in favor of receiving this report? And that's carried. Thank you. The Equity and Inclusion Committee, as you recall, I did step in for Trustee Kaiser, who wasn't able to be with us. And I do have a very brief report on that one as well. The Equity and Inclusion Committee met on Wednesday, November the 15th, 2023 to discuss the following items. The Equity Action Plan Report, no recommendations were made. So I would move the receipt of this report on the Equity and Inclusion Committee. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Trustee Boland. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the receipt of this report? And that's carried. Thank you again. And on to SEAC Committee, I believe. Trustee Gannett, could I call on you again to give us a report on SEAC?
Yes, Chair. The Special Education Committee met on November 15th. And, there were three things that were reviewed: staff updates, special education report from the board, and association reports. And there were no recommendations made. I recommend that we move
You move the receipt of
the receipt of this
receipt
report.
of this report. Thank you, Trustee Gannett. Do I have a seconder for the receipt of this report? Trustee Dobson, thank you. Any questions or comments on SEAC Committee report?
And I thank my fellow trustee Leo Boland for coming to the SEAC Committee. Appreciate it. And also another fellow trustee, interim, Jody Primo, stepped up and said that she would temporarily make an effort either virtually or in person to come to future meetings until we get another trustee on board.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
So we have a motion on the floor to accept this report. All in favor? And that is carried as well. Thank you very much. Okay, where are we at now? The director's update, I believe, is next on the agenda. Sure, it's the alternate to you, Director Kelly.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. On page 5 of your package, there is a report. It highlights a number of things that are happening across the district. In particular, you'll notice information around student success, world of choices, and children of all trades. So highlight a couple. November 8th was Indigenous Veterans Day, and that was honored across the school district. And also Remembrance Day had some very powerful, important ceremonies and services in schools, and I had the pleasure of attending at Cobden. Our Student Support Fund, again, I think that's been highlighted, but there were some very generous donations, which we certainly appreciate from a couple of organizations. And we had a speaker with our community and with our administrators on menopause, which was interesting. And a recent email has gone out to parents across the district, telling them a little bit more about the kinds of things that we're doing, what's happening and also our new social media guidelines and encouraging people to communicate with us and listen to the materials that we have out there. And also with a couple of the trustees here, the OPSPA provided some governance sessions, which I think were very useful for both the board and for the director. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Kelly. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much for that report. I think the report is probably next on the agenda, and I do have it included there for you as well. Of course, noted that we started off the month on not a very happy note with the loss of Trustee Morris, and thankfully things got better as the month went on. So I did mention a little bit about the Remembrance Day services. I wasn't able to get to any this year, but I've heard some really remarkable things about so many that happened in our schools. So that's always wonderful to hear. Community supports to our schools, again, just following up on Director Kelly's comments. I know that Cobden Public School, for example, received funds from the Smile Cookie Campaign. I suspect there might have been some other schools did as well, but I know that one for sure. Trustee Dobson made sure we were aware of that, and even brought us cookies to support it. So that was much appreciated, of course, as well. And I understand the Rotary Club of Renfrew too is also providing additional support to Central Public School in Renfrew. As you recall, they were very instrumental in getting their new playground in place, and they continue to support that school, which is certainly one that is definitely in need. The Ontario Public School Board Association, we did have a regional meeting early November in Gananoque. Had the opportunity to it's always fun to go to a different school, and it also happened that day that they had a craft sale in the same school. So it was a really busy little school. I didn't actually get out to do any shopping. Trustee Doherty, I don't think you did either, right? But some of the FH I know did take their lunch go through that as well. But we had a really interesting presentation by one of the teachers at the school, along with the I'm not sure what her title is. I can't remember now, but it's a kind of an educator also from the Thousand Island Playhouse, and just how they're cooperating and working together and giving students an opportunity to learn more about all of the ins and outs of putting on a play. They actually work through a series of 6 weeks where they do, set design one week and costuming another week and sound engineering another week. And at the end, they actually put on a play at second semester. So very, very interesting. And our regional vice chair, Karen McGregor from Limestone, led us in a professional development session too, which just got us thinking about the kind of skill sets we have around the trustee table and how we can make the best use of them and how we interact with them. So that was kind of a fun morning for us too. Over this past weekend, we also had the OPSPA Board of Directors meeting, which I know Trustee Doherty will give us a bit of an update on, and I can give you a bit of an update on Advocacy Day as well. And just finally, thank you to the trustees for re-electing me as chair again for one more year. And along with Vice Chair Boland, we'll try to do our best to lead us in the right way, and looking forward to another interesting year, that's for sure. So that's my report. And now I'll turn it over to student trustee Ding. I'll get it right yet for your report, Grace, if you would, please.
I think April might want to start.
Okay, I see you up on the board there too. So welcome, and you can start off, I think, and then Grace will carry on.
Okay, perfect. So over the past month, Grace and I were super busy planning for our November 23rd Senate meeting, which we had last Thursday. We met with Lisa to discuss her speaking at our meeting on our board's mental health action plan. Grace and I believe that it would be very beneficial to get student feedback on the plans that have been made so far. We discussed the importance of students understanding the continuum of physical and mental health, resources available for students, and upcoming services and initiatives our CDSB will be taking on. At our Senate meeting, we also we're joined by Superintendent Kuzno to discuss our plans for implementing a reporting system. I've also held an equity, inclusion, and diversity meeting with my AIG for OSTA and have a retreat this weekend just to continue working on OSTA's initiatives.
And on the provincial level, I recently attended a virtual public and Catholic
student trustee joint meeting to discuss issues in our region and also think about future initiatives and plans of action for the future.
Very interesting. Good. And what kinds of issues did you hear about that are coming that sort of seem similar across the region? Can you think of any that popped off with your head?
Definitely with rural boards, it's been a big issue with transportation. I know with us. I know Ottawa Carleton is also struggling with transportation right now. And then another issue I've noticed, especially in our region, has been funding.
Okay. Funding for everything pretty much. Right? Just to let you know, I did have a conversation with 3 student trustees at the Advocacy Day yesterday, and they were saying wonderful things about the trustees in Renfrew County. So that's always good. The student trustees are very engaging in a group, and they do really well. Really do well. We're so impressed with them. So thank you for that. Okay, OPSPA update. Kim, can you give us a bit of an overview of what you heard for part of this Sunday?
The OPSPA meeting was on Sunday, and they usually send out a summary, which I'll forward to everyone as well. And just a couple things to highlight. So the OPSPA lunchtime sessions, the learning sessions that were done, averaged about 150 people for each session. And they're available on OPSPA YouTube if you didn't get a chance to watch them. They're pretty good. I think I missed one of them. So, and a survey is going to be sent out to those who attended just to see kind of what you thought of it, improvements and that kind of thing. And then the other thing was the Public Education Symposium. The registration, I believe, is now open. And it's January 25th and 26th in Toronto. I don't think that they're doing anything virtually for that. So I think it's only in person.
It's only in person, and it's Thursday and Friday this year. For those of you who have been to other ones, you'll know it's sort of been Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We've condensed it back to Thursday and Friday, except that the Ministry of Education decided that, or agreed to fund some special training for chairs and vice chairs that's going to be held on the Saturday. So it's been an add-on now to the Thursday, Friday. They just found that out last Friday, so that's why you didn't know about it ahead of time. But you might just want to think about that a little bit. So that should be interesting. So yes, take a look at the agenda. Very interesting. Quite a good lineup of people. So I'm hoping that some of our trustees will be able to go. But I know it's a bit of a journey from Renfrew County, but the opportunity to get together and meet with other trustees and do some professional development, it's really well worth it. I'll just follow along with the Advocacy Day. Our board meetings are usually Friday night and Saturday, but because we do Advocacy Day in November with MPPs on the Monday, we kind of shift it all ahead so that our board of directors meeting was on Sunday, which is a little bit unusual, but that's what happened. So Advocacy Day was held yesterday, and we had approximately 40 different trustees met with over 40 MPPs. And one of the things that the OPSPA staff does is over the last several months, they set up meetings with the MPPs. We have half an hour with the MPP and their staff, and we focus in on a variety of priorities. So we have an information package which we work with, but we also leave a package with the MPP as well so that they know what we're talking about. And it depends on who you're talking with, right, as to where you might want to focus on, because in half an hour, after you've done a little meet and greet and, get to know you a little bit, then you don't have much time left, to be honest, sometimes. But the priorities this year that we focused on was general education funding, which isn't unusual, of course, but particularly looking at mental health, special ed, and student transportation. Those were the 3 chunks under funding. Indigenous education was another priority that we talked about, supporting that curriculum. School capital and facilities, that whole piece is really critical to so many boards across the country. They're trying to build new schools and trying to figure out the best way to manage that. It's not, I know the priority of the facility management is important to us, but the capital is not quite so much, but lots of other boards are handling that one. Grants for student needs focused in on all kinds of things, everything from mental health, special education, student transportation, skills, trades, and apprenticeship, and more. So there were a variety of things that we tried to kind of hone in on one or two priorities. And sometimes the MPP would also want to know something specific or, would wonder about. And so that was helpful as well. And we did meet with not just conservative MPPs, but a variety of people. So I, for example, met with Chandra Pasma, who is the education critic for the Liberals, and she's very engaging and very knowledgeable about education, which is lovely. The one thing that maybe ties in a little bit to the last item that you'll see in your package, which was the accelerated apprenticeship program. OPSPA has been working on a response to that. The ministry is consulting on that piece of Bill 98. As you remember, Bill 98 has got many pieces that have been going out for consultation. Some have been completed, some are in progress. But the accelerated apprenticeship one, the consultation actually closed last Friday. But we did take the opportunity to speak with a number of MPPs about it because we are concerned about the models where they're talking about allowing 15-year-olds to leave school and go directly into an apprenticeship program without still staying attached to the school. A million concerns, as I'm sure you have as well. So that was one of the areas that we did spend quite a bit of time on. And OPSPA had asked individual boards to also put in letters of concern if we felt we wanted to. I went ahead and did that on your behalf last week because the deadline was last Friday. I did speak with Trustee Gannett, who I know is near and dear to his heart around this whole apprenticeship piece and how this might work. And Trustee Boland and I spoke about it as well. And I talked to Director Kelly too. So I'm hoping you'll forgive me for going ahead and doing it on your behalf ahead of time. But we felt it was important to allow boards to also have their say on it because OPSPA certainly puts in their submission, but it's only counted as one, whereas if the rest of us put in ours as well, it adds a bit of weight to that. So that was a bit of a concern. Anyway, I think generally the Advocacy Day was very well received. We also had a reception last night from 5:30 to 7 or so, where we had additional MPPs join us and quite a bit of staff. Minister Lecce was there and spoke. Chandra Pasma spoke as well. So it was really quite a good event. It's a very long day. And I have to give kudos to the OPSPA staff because the organization of it is remarkable. We have a live tracker to know where you're supposed to be when, which ones have been canceled and which ones have been added because MPPs come and go, right? Sometimes they have to cancel out at 10, but they're okay at 3. So it was very interesting. We also got to go to question period, which is always somewhat entertaining. But it is interesting to be at least for part of it, because there is a section where they allow MPPs to do welcome to people who are in the gallery. And so a lot of the MPPs would welcome the school board trustee from their area or, welcome to OPSPA. We know you're here, welcome. So that was good. It certainly has raise the level of profile of, I think, of the good work that OPSPA does in supporting public education in Ontario. So busy day, long day, but it was well worthwhile. So if anybody wants to know more, and I know Kim wasn't able to go this year, but all of the board of directors are engaged in Advocacy Day if they can be. And so it's quite a group that we do kind of take over the cafeteria for a little bit of time. So I think with that, unless there is any other business that we have overlooked. Yes, Trustee Gannett.
Just briefly, more of a comment. I really appreciate you taking the time to write this particular letter to the minister, but also near the end of it, it says in the 2022-23, an incredible 43% of the RCDSB grade 11 and 12 students participated in the above mentioned cooperative programs. So we've got high numbers, but again, just as you brought up and Grace brought up, transportation, anybody that's talking to anybody regarding co-op and OYAP and all those other programs, it continues to be a real issue.
It's a barrier.
It's a real barrier. And we talk about equality. it's really, really challenging for some of those students. So hopefully, not just boards of education, but communities and everybody can pool together. And I don't know, it's not an easy answer, but this is an expensive venture, but I think for the kids moving forward, to have those opportunities. I've talked to co-op teachers and OER people, and the challenges persist. And I wish I could say they were getting better, but I'm not optimistic in the very short term. They're going to get better. And it continues to be a major concern. So that being said, they do the best they can with the information for the monies that they have for transportation.
Absolutely, and I think that was one of the pieces that when we were talking to the MPPs about was what we would recommend they do instead of the new models, strengthen the ones that are working well already, you know, provide additional funding to the ones that we know are working well. And then I really appreciated, I know that Meredith pulled together these numbers in conjunction, obviously, with Alex and others, so that we can show the impact that these programs are currently doing and they're working. So let's continue with those, right? So that was our message very much to the MPPs. So thank you for that. Okay, there's no other business. I think we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you, I guess, next week for another board meeting on December the 5th. So thank you for your indulgence today. Yeah. My goodness.
Dinner. Yeah.